there, friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. My name is Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is a short show I do every Wednesday evening, where I talk about a board game, a top 10 list, a board game related topic, whatever I happen to be feeling like at the moment. I've got a brand new purple hat today with a great big bloodshot eye, and a special guest hiding just off corner. Yeah. Say hi.
Hi.
This is this is Kana, who's visiting me from Thailand. So just watching, but we're not. Kana doesn't have to prepare anything for the show. Just wanted to say hello. Say hi.
Hi.
All right. So today, what I thought I would talk about. So last week, I ran a game night with the kids at church. And so what I was thinking about might be a fun thing to think about, and this isn't really going to be one of my top 10s or a review or anything. It's just going to be kind of a whimsical musing where I talk about some things that I've been thinking about. And what I was thinking about is what goes into a game night with a group of kind of non-gamers. So again, last week, the kids from church, I work with the youth group, usually kind of ages 11 to 18, at our church, and they had asked me if I would bring some games over and run a game night for them. And I've done this a few times. And so I've got some experience, and I thought, okay, what goes into that? So a couple of initial thoughts. First of all, it's great if you know who's coming. I will tell you, at most church events and work events, you often know a few people who are coming, but not everyone, right? There might be people who don't show up, people who bring a friend. And so you really have to, rule one, prepare for unexpected events. What do I mean? Well, the last game night that I ran at the church, there were, I think, 4 kids who showed up. And 4 is a great number, right? 4 plus me, that makes 5. Lots of games work at 5. The nights before that, it was, also in there. Sometimes they'd come over to my house or whatever. So I kind of have that in my mind, that it's going to be about 5 of us, and I take games with that in mind. But I always bring a game or two that's going to work with a larger player count, because you really, truly never do know. And last week there were 9. And going from 5 to 9... or 9 to 5 is something Dolly Parton can do, but 5 to 9, how I hate those lonely hours, that can be kind of difficult. So know who's coming, but prepare for the unexpected. A second thing is you want to have games that will work for a large group of people. Because of that sort of capacity, you're going to want things that are flexible. Now, I love a complicated Euro game. I love a 2-player head-to-head battle game. I love lots of kinds of games. But if I'm running the game night for the youth, I can't take the games I love best. I have to take games that I really enjoy and I can be excited about. But the games that I love best often have to sit at home behind, unfortunately. And that just kind of is what it is. You also want games that are going to have really easy rules. Now, it doesn't always have to be party games, and I'm going to talk about a few of them in a minute, but you want games that you can teach, because no one's ever going to show up at the same time, right? And on Wednesday, it was exactly like that. I showed up an hour early to set it up, and I set up a couple of games on tables, and then, the kids started showing up at 7, and they kind of trickled in until 7:30. And so we had to have games that were nimble, that I could get anyone into, because what no one wants to do is come and sit and wait for an hour while the game is getting started, while you're waiting for something else to finish. So you need games that are easy to pick up and that have really nimble player counts where you can add people to them. Again, party games work really well in this, and at the end of this discussion, I'm going to talk about a few games that I think really work really well. But it just has to be, if it's not going to be a party game, it has to be something that people can drop in, drop out, and go. Thirdly, I guess, you want to have games that don't have a lot of reading or concentration, especially if you're with younger people. I mean, I'm not talking about 7, 8-year-olds, but if you're with younger people, they're going to have different reading levels. They're going to have different concentration. That sort of skill of reading and instantly understanding something is something that comes with a lot of practice. So you're not going to want to have something where someone's going to feel dumb, or where someone's going to feel like they're not able to be involved just because of the language. So, if there's going to be any text on cards, you're going to want it to be really minimal. And you don't want something where people are going to be, needing to concentrate in order to make an ideal turn, because it's the kind of loud, raucous atmosphere, even at church, where you're just not going to be able to get that kind of concentrated environment. So again, things that work with a big group, things that are nimble in player count and have easy rules, and things that don't have any necessary reading or concentration. Another thing is you want things to be short. Nobody wants to... Look, I love a 3-hour game. I really do. But not everyone does. And especially, you don't know how long these events are going to last. I mean, ours are usually 2 hours, but I can't just play one game for the 2 hours. I need something that we can get in, get played, and get back out again in 10 minutes. Because here's what's going to happen. People always, especially not... I mean, look, we in the board game hobby, we like to play, one thing and then another thing and then another thing. I know I do. You see all those games back there? I have to get them played somehow. And if I just focus on one, I'll never do that. But at these events, usually what I've found is that people want to play the same game 4 or 5 times, or at least 2 or 3 times. So you'll want something that's short enough that you can repeat it. And then, sometimes on the second time through, people are going to have a different experience, maybe a better experience. Now, if you want to set all of those rules or suggestions aside, you can, right? You do so at your peril, but I will tell you that if you make it a cooperative game, oftentimes that's going to allow you a little bit more flexibility. Because even in a more complex game, if everyone's working together and you can kind of drive it, then that's going to help the people to have a good time and be able to feel like they're part of the game night. I've talked about this with youth at church, but it also works at the office. I've hosted game nights at my office, sometimes with summer interns, sometimes with my regular colleagues. We'll just gather around a conference table some Friday evening, and I find that these are also important because you just really need to make sure that you are hosting a game night. And that is the final and most important rule, is if you are the host, your fun needs to come from other people having fun. Because your playing the game really isn't the whole purpose of your being there. You're there to sort of bring the joy of board games to the other people who are having this. Yes, you can have fun, but you need to get fun out of helping other people do so, rather than out of just playing the game yourself. So those are kind of the, not 10 commandments, but a certain number of commandments for board game night with church or work. And now I wanted to talk about a few games that I think really work quite well for these groups. And some of them I've played with the church group, some I played with the work group. But here we go. I'm just going to talk about a couple of them. The first one I'm going to talk about is the game One Night Ultimate Werewolf. So One Night Ultimate Werewolf, lots of people know Werewolf. Werewolf is the wrong kind of game to play at an event like this because it's long, and oftentimes people have nothing to do, especially if you get eliminated. In One Night Werewolf, it's all over in 10 minutes, or sometimes less. And so you give everybody a roll, you can download the app or read the text yourself, everybody kind of does their thing, everyone has some information, and then it's time to vote, and we decide who won and who lost, and we're ready to play a second time in just 10 minutes, or less, right? I'm talking 5 minutes, sometimes these games last. So this game, we played it, I think last week, we played it 3 times in a row, and it was just really a great big success. The kids came up to me on Sunday and told me how much they liked it, and how they wanted to get it themselves. So One Night Werewolf is a really good game for an event like this. The next game I want to talk about is a very silly game, but this is one of my most successful sort of game night games. It often is my closer. It can also be the opener, but it is a delight of a game called Happy Salmon. So Happy Salmon, really this very light party game, 6 people, or if you have 2 sets, 12, standing around a table, just, going high five, or pound it, or the dreaded Happy Salmon, and just having a raucous time, and the game is over in 2 minutes at most. So there's 1 minute to explain it, 2 minutes to play it, and you're already done. this game is a surefire success, especially with younger people, but also with adults if they're willing not to take themselves too seriously. So there you go. That's Happy Salmon. Another one that you might not think of, but is really it really works well for game nights like this. It's a dexterity game, and there's a new version of it that's out, but the version I'm showing you is the original. The game is called Dungeon Fighter. This is just such a bizarre, silly game, but what you're doing is you're taking dice and you're rolling them and you're trying to bounce them onto that target. And then you might be doing silly things like, okay, you're fighting Medusa, so you have to close your eyes when you throw your die. Or you might be fighting, I don't know, a stinky boar, and so you have to take a big step back from the table. Lots of silliness. Definitely not a game to take too seriously, but one that, I think we played twice again the last time I took it out with the kids at church. And it's a surefire hit as long as people are willing to get up and have a good time, not take things too seriously. Another game that I discovered fairly recently that we also played last week with the kids. It wasn't the first time I played it, and the game's been out for a while, but the game is called Poetry for Neanderthals. And it does have a disadvantage in that it has this stick that you've got to blow up that I hate. But this is a word game, and I found that it worked really well with the kids because I could coach them on what to do. But you've got a card, you're trying to get people to guess what the word is. Fairly typical for a board game, but you're trying to describe it using only one-word sentences, just one-word words. So if the word were, for example, dance, I could say, thing you do with music and feet. And as long as I'm describing it without using the words on the card and using only one syllables, if my team guesses it, I get a point. You can go for sort of the more expensive, the more difficult word to try and get extra points. It works really well, especially if you're able to sort of play it twice, because the first time people might not understand the brief. But I found that it does work pretty well, and the kids had a good time with it. Two more that I'm going to talk about in kind of the, well, lots more, but we're running out of time very quickly. The next one is a thinkier game, but also works really well, not with as big a group as some of the others. Those are big group games. The one I'm talking about next is the game QE. QE is a silly little auction game. It's unlike anything else, though, and you might have to know the crowd, but the rules are super simple and the game's fast, because what you're trying to do is get sets of stuff, but the hook is that you can bid any amount that you want. So you just write down the amount, and somebody is getting some information, and you know how much you bid, and you're trying to get as much stuff as possible, but you don't want to spend the most, because if you spend the most, oh well, you lose, and losing is not that great. So it works really well as long as people understand how money works and understand sort of that concept of you want to bid a lot, you just don't want to bid too much. And I often find this is one I'll have to play with, because I can make that first bid and be the sort of auctioneer for the first one and write a great big number, sort of to get the juices flowing. So that's QE. Another one that I find works really well, and I've only played it with 8. I've never played it with the full 16. I think that's kind of madness, but I think I did an episode about it a year ago when I got it played the first time, and that is Challengers. So Challengers, silly, basically it's war, but it's simultaneous, and that's sort of where this one really shines, is once you get one round, you can show people how one round works, and then it's just go. And you set everybody up at their new sections. You teach them to do a little bit of trash talking in this very silly game. And ultimately what you're trying to do is flip over a card and get control of this flag token and have it at the end of the round, or make your opponent kind of bust. It works really well. It's got those simple rules. It is a little bit longer, so you're going to want to wait until the whole group is kind of there. But it's the kind of raucous, silly time with low rules complexity that's exactly what you're looking for in a board game night. And then I want to talk about another 2 games that kind of they break my core rule, but meet my secondary make it cooperative rule. The first one is Marvel Zombies. So I've talked about this one before as well, but Marble Zombies is a cooperative game with a theme that especially, I wouldn't take this one to the office, but with the kids at church, especially the young men, they really think, they're into this kind of stuff. And it's this sort of cooperative, very silly, schlocky turns where you can just, do what you want, take your turn, and everyone's working together. And the fact that it's cooperative, as long as I'm prepared to run that first round or two to sort of make sure everyone's getting it, this one works really well. And then the other one that also works really well in this kind of category is Project Elite. It's one of the first ones I ever played with the kids on a weeknight game night. Just because it is cooperative and it's fast and real time. And again, you kind of have to have that first round be a bust, just sort of a practice round, so that everyone realizes what you're going to be doing. But once everyone understands this game works together really well, I find the kids often like to bite off more than they can chew and take an extra hard version. But hey, we're not playing for money. Anyway, that's kind of what I've got for you today. Another one that works well is So Clover or Just One. I won't talk about them anymore because we're almost out of time. But I really enjoy these sort of game nights that I run at church. We do them about once a quarter, sometimes more often. But it's a really good way to kind of show my hobby off to, the future leaders of the world, at least, the leaders of our church, I guess, the youth group. I enjoy doing it at work too, but really doing it with these sort of teenagers is just a delight. And I love it every time they ask me to do it. And these are some games I think that will work well for yours. If you are involved in a church group, a youth group, a work group, whatever group it is, if it's for non-gamers and people who you don't expect to own 30,000 games, or 1,000 games, then these are some good tips for you. I hope you'll have a great game night. And that's what I've got for you today. Next week is Gen Con. I am going to try and record one of these before I leave, just so that, we don't miss a Wednesday if possible. I might even do a games I'm excited for at Gen Con, even though I did that with Ilya. We'll see what I'm thinking about. But I'm excited to go and see new things. But that's what we've got for you today. So we're going to say goodbye to our visitor from Thailand.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. And I'm going to wish you safe travels, courage when you need it, and I hope to see you back again next time on another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.